All right, I'm filming here.
Where do you want me to start from?
From when we started playing, where you wanted first originally.
Druga coś światło zatrzymać niż to sobie.
Yeah, ugas svet.
Lights?
After I promise.
Great. Yeah, so we will be talking to the tape, but let's see what I get. It's not impossible.
We can turn
Oh,
the
it's
house
good, good.
lights on the
Okay.
perimeter.
Oh, okay.
Wait. Yes.
Oh, that's very good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what do we do? Yeah. Okay. Stop it for a sec. Okay. So we will now be the researchers. As Carrie said in the beginning, we are not just playing. This is a play laboratory playground. And so while we are watching this, we can stop at any time. We won't watch the whole thing, but just parts of it that you want to see, and ask ourselves, like, how come, who thought of what, in what time, what were the ideas there that were floating, why did you decide to do something, what you did, or whatever. So let's see how we started playing. This is after we told the story and we are beginning to play.
Fateful decision.
I think the natural place to start would be when we are conducting those we can actually do this scene too. We can actually do the community. Yeah, we don't have to follow that exact here. So what do we do? Go for it. You're gonna be sharp, okay? Your canopy location. There is need more ducklings. You want me to get ducklings? Okay. So you're the mother, chicken, sheriff, sibling, Wally, sibling.
Can you stop for a second? How did you decide to be the mother?
Maternal instincts, I guess.
You were sure. You were like,
Yeah,
I am the mother.
Right away. Did anybody have the reason why you choose to be mother, or you were just completely kind of like, I don't know.
I almost always, I love being able to play bad guys in improv and performance. I just find them much more interesting characters.
Mm-hmm.
So that was why I chose to be the one saying you're ugly, you're ugly, you're ugly.
Watch for the. Could you please sit over there and watch the tables?
I wound up as a turtle. Somebody suggested we have turtles. They went through beaver and deer and things. And people around me seemed to want, think turtle is a good idea. And so once it was set, it wasn't my choice, but once it was set, I began to think of all the possibilities of kinds of movements, because a turtle could rotate. And then do things with the head and legs, and so I figured that's what I was going to do. I was going to be periodically in motion, just doing, looking around, witnessing things, and saying something. And if I felt there was something important at some point to say to the swan.
I wasn't like, I have to be the ugly duckling. I was kind of like, well, if no one else will do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, I thought you were doing it to fill that we needed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's continue.
I don't know, how did you choose to be the sheriff?
How did I choose to be the
Yeah,
sheriff?
why did you, what made that?
I have no idea.
You really look like one.
You did, you really went into the sheriff role.
Solid, yeah. Solid, I mean, you just,
Yeah. I don't
That's-
know.
that's
I
the
know
point,
that Alice said if we want to add characters, and it seemed like all the other characters were taken. Nobody needed us. I thought who could add something to the picture.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting for me, this trumpeter swan, just a way I usually maintain my distance and hang out and just throw in words and lines, so I could do that even in this,
Uh-huh.
by just flying around and staying on the outside rather than getting engaged in the process.
Okay, that's very interesting. So kind of you're bringing things into the game, but in your own way.
yeah.
Yes.
I definitely did not want to be a bad guy, and I really liked
Yeah.
being the character that would help the swan see that she was not alone.
Ah, that's very.
Yeah, you were a good protector.
Okay.
And I'm one of the people.
That was me.
Okay? Ready? Ready, yes. Good boy. Very good, they're all around us. But you do want a little bit, just lightly play with it. I can figure it out. Some call it red. Call it red. Well, these look fine, but there's something wrong with that egg. Better take your other chips down and fill it in the square. It's gotta get
What about the egg? You leave the egg there?
Leave the egg, something wrong with it.
I don't know. Maybe. Like one locust thing to say to the egg. And I'll call it right. I think I have enough low buttons. If there is something wrong with it.
This one's
Well, what about me? What are you looking to do?
You're handsome.
Okay, good.
Your friend Sarah.
Oh, that's fine.
God.
Jane.
You got an egg there. I'll keep an eye on it for you. Go down to the phone. Yeah. Excuse me, youngin. Respect. You're all here.
Okay, everybody stays still. This was a perfect morning on the pond and something really bad. Perfect little town, perfect little farm, and something really wrong.
You're all getting wet.
I would take a
Weird.
turn with
Getting
my
wet.
witnesses.
Nothing wrong with her. I think she's a chicken. Same colors. Brown and very ragged.
She's trying to be
And dirty and wet. I bet you can't even swim. Chicken, hell yeah. Chicken, water. Yeah. Yeah, I'll take care of you.
Leave it downstairs. Clean it up.
like you were really in it, and not so kind of like partly here, partly there, but was there a transition for you when you felt like you were in the scene and you were there?
No.
No.
I think at times a surprise, when I didn't expect somebody to improvise in a certain way or a certain action that wasn't in the script. Because I had to I had to assimilate that and relate to it. And as I was doing that, I felt that I was in the scene.
What about if you never were performing fully or not performing fully? What about if things are more none of that and all of the above at the same time?
So you were both, you were in it and not the whole time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
You were kind of constantly being able to observe yourself and plan from outside what you're going to do in there.
I don't think that was that clear cut and that rational behind. I was just trying to be part of what was going on. I don't think there was any decision-making process.
No.
Like choosing, I'm going to be this one.
Yes.
I didn't feel self-conscious and part of it until I grabbed the swan's hand, and it was the moment I had purpose. Which is everyone was trying to take her to visit all these mean people, and I was just like, just keep moving. And I had a purpose. And so once I had a purpose in the story, then I could be totally in the story. But without the purpose for myself, I was sort of just
like
playing around and like being in it, but not really.
And how you know that you had a purpose?
I'm just thinking
It
about
emerged,
it now.
like it emerged.
I just, yeah, it was reaction to other people, but it was me having a purpose in my actions.
There does seem to be a moment when you're like in the scene as opposed to the periphery of the scene. I think when you're in the scene, you're more in character in the performance. I think that's what you were referring to.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you want me to say?
Yeah, it was very interesting to as a self-conscious to feel like in a transition phase and doing nothing like just following something, and it was a bit complicated to see in future what will happen.
Yeah, because it was a little bit unpredictable. We had the story, but still we are like, we couldn't do anything we wanted.
I wanted to be a part of the group because I was like in the chorus of the being a duck, but my knees were killing me. Do I stand up and be, stand out of the crowd? Because I couldn't see a leg sitting there.
But that, I think
I
that
was
would
trying to
have
swim in the pond, but it's.
I think that would have played well in the whole thing though if you had just said like, wow, my knees are killing me.
I need to fly.
I'm leaving the pond.
I'm
leaving this pond.
Just striking that there seemed to be, some kind of intuitive recognition that when you said something, it moved the narrative forward in a meaningful way. That said, yeah, now you're part of something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what, it's just an instinct.
Yeah, I thought there were moments where everybody recognized, oh, this is a moment where we're going forward, and people kind of. So I thought that happened when Susan was born. Like everybody was like, okay, now we have. So maybe it's the purpose thing too. Okay, now we have the duckling. Okay, and then also I thought in a moment. There's that moment where we come together and we start singing, get out of, I thought there were moments when multiple people were doing the same thing. When I was a part of that, I had the experience of not being separate, not being thinking about it.
And I was surprised when you said you go away and you left completely, and I thought like, okay, it was so premature, I thought, to have the duck. The ugly duckling leave so fast before all kinds of meaniness can happen in between. So I wanted, and I think you were going to bring her back.
Yes.
Yes. So you were, okay, don't send it to my house.
Right.
Let's see. And you
I felt very powerful there. You were really getting
See you later. No.
Wrong direction you're going, I believe. We don't know what happened, she just decided to leave.
No pressure. We don't know why. No pressure.
Sure. Make sure my kitties are protected. Very good looking, very good looking.
Stood up. Yeah.
I'm gonna be sitting now.
Wow, that's a duck.
Just
Who's coming? Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. Okay, you go over there. Nobody's coming. Here. May I help you? Now, take it. What do you think? No? See, I'm very smart. Turkey. She swims, though. Very smart. She's very beautiful. Chickens don't swim. Talking about chickens swim. You swim? Yeah. Can't be chickens. Chickens don't swim. Excuse me, it's got web feet. Excuse me. I just cleaned. Not a chicken, not a chicken.
It's a hardball. Turning into a musical. You can see how gang warfare.
Evil people in there.
Yeah. We will see a little part of the second episode, and then we will stop that on talk, unless you want to make more comments about the. Okay, let's see. Our second part.
Why did you make the move to call Susan back in as the duckling?
She was so good at that. Absolutely, she was.
I was thinking I wanted her to have the positive experience too. I was like, don't put her in.
Just skip a little. I don't know how to do this.
So please find out if it's stop and we the definition and maybe you find people if you want to order no, it's very small. It's small, but yeah, but we want to make it and
forward?
I don't know this game.
All right, quiet. You are
From the end. I want to see some Mary, how she turned out as a turtle on the back.
Oh, that was great.
Poor Mary became sick from that.
Oh, God. Don't stop.
You should stop it right there.
Yeah.
No, I just sense that, to me, I'm watching a transformation where she's assuming responsibility.
Right, yeah, no, you became.
She's making a choice where she now is protecting.
Yeah, that was really beautiful.
Nice moment.
Yeah, that's a beautiful moment.
Because she found somewhere where she could belong.
Yeah.
She
I
has two friends now.
had such mixed feelings at the end when we convinced her she was a swan. I think she wanted to be a turtle, right? It's like, all right, go be a turtle.
How often does that happen in life?
I know.
People adopt something that really isn't authentic and then
They gotta give it up.
I think we'll stop watching here and spend the rest of it, the time talking about what the views of Vygotsky and other people on play are and what ours are. I just have to call Viggo to turn this off. I don't want to burn his screen.
want to make sure you're not making a mistake.
It's nice of them.
Okay. All right, we can make another circle or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'll just keep this on for a while. Thanks. All right, so do you want to start?
Yeah. So this is our, I mean, it's all a discovery portion, but part of our job here is to see what we can learn and discover about this process. And in particular, some of the differences, similarities between how Anna and I see this. So I thought I'd start by asking you, why the ugly duckling story? Why do you choose that?
Well, the ugly duckling story has a lot of symbolism in it. First of all, Hans Christian Andersen wrote it as really his autobiographical story. I don't know if you know, he was an ugly man with a hump, and his beauty was only in telling stories, and it was his redemption story somehow. But I chose it because I was asked to create a workshop in Belgrade, where I come from originally, for a program that runs parallel with the once a year there is a festival of experimental theaters in Belgrade, and parallel to it is a festival of drama in education and art in education, people who are connected and trying to, Carrie is trying here and in some centers in the world, to bring creativity and especially dramatic arts, improvisation, and acting as part of the educational process. So I was creating a workshop for teachers, which was really, let's rewrite Ugly Duckling. In creative writing, in collective creative writing. So we were all working together in recreating the story. And my idea was that we all remember, as we remember today, some more, some less, some don't know, which is how children are normally. Some know something more about any subject that they are playing, and some less. There is kind of an image of characters, what they can be, what they do, how they relate to each other. And before we start to play, those are very abstract, and there's just almost like a sketchy. And once you start to play, you start to put real life into that, and sentences pop out, sudden ideas about what also can happen in the story. You start really exploring in depth some scenes there, and of course if we had time, if we had 3 months to make this story into our story, there would be a lot of material that we bring from our lives and put sort of, so to speak, the meat on the skeleton somehow. So I thought writing is really creating scenes that are very vivid, full of life, full of relationships that are not just sketchy. And that's how I designed this. And then I liked the idea that people play, and said, well, that could be just a playground, a play workshop. You don't have to end up with writing, because that really takes a longer time, several days, until you turn this now into a written text and end up with a story. So this was the play part of the longer workshop. That's how I chose it.
I'm torn between two different things. I want to ask you to say some of how Vygotsky has influenced your work. Actually, I'm going to do that, and then I think it'd be most interesting to kind of get our questions and responses and thoughts. So do people know who Vygotsky is? I know I said a little bit at the beginning, but no. So Russian psychologist who lived at the first half of the 20th century. He grew up in pre-revolutionary Russia, and then but did most of his adult work post-revolution. He died very young in his early 30s, so he had a brief but very prolific period. And as I said earlier, his work has very much shaped our work here at the Institute, but he's actually, in the last 20 years, his influence in American educational, psychological areas has just been growing. And I mean, there's so many ways to describe what he did and said, but I think one big influence is he was really one of the first psychologists to say that development is a social, completely social process. So as opposed to it being something that happens inside of us, a maturation, it's something that's completely immersed in the culture and social life around us. He also, as opposed to Piaget, who talks very much about development being this maturational platform on which learning can happen. So you reach a certain stage and you can learn in certain ways, and then you move to another stage. Vygotsky eliminated the idea of stages in that way and talked much more about the dialectical relationship between learning and development, that instruction and learning pushes development forward, and then development, as you develop, it opens up possibilities for new learning. So it's, rather than those being separate processes, they're completely dialectically related. I think he wrote a lot about different things, and some of his work around art and acting in particular is some of the work that Anna draws on. We here at the Institute have drawn a lot on his understanding of play as being a place where children go beyond themselves, where they don't just do what they know how to do, but do what they don't know how to do. And also his understanding of language as being something that isn't an expression of what's in your head, but an active process, completed process between thinking and speaking that people do. That's a 1-year course on Vygotsky in 45 seconds. So what about Vygotsky, what about this speaks to you as a Vygotskian? What is it, what parts of what he's talking about do you call upon? Or?
Well, the way how Vygotsky wrote about play, he said that the play has at least 2 components that can't be eliminated. One is creating of the imaginary situation, and the other one is rules. Every play has rules. Some plays that are more governed by rules are plays like chess or sports, and some plays which are seemingly ungoverned by rules are governed by the invention of the imaginary situation in which we are searching really for what can and what cannot be done. So we are really kind of inventing rules on the go, but not everything can fit in the play situation. So we are constantly exploring those borders as to when I asked you, when did you feel you were in or not? It's kind of like, when did you figure out what goes in and what doesn't go? And you said, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Marion. Okay. That you needed to have purpose. That's very, very profound, because it goes very well with something else that Vygotsky may have not said explicitly, but he was influenced by Stanislavski. He was a contemporary of Stanislavski, and of course, if you heard of Stanislavski, he created a whole method of how to train actors to actually create plays and characters. So one of the things that Stanislavski was talking about is that in every character, in order to be a character, has a purpose. And when you're being trained as an actor, you have to always, for every scene, think of like, what is it that I want to do in this scene? What is my purpose, or the purpose of me as a character? And then what the obstacles are. Yeah.
There's 2 ways to take the word purpose. One is the purpose of the author of the play, and the other is the purpose of the character in the play.
Yes.
This is the purpose of the character.
This
right?
is the purpose of the character. And what you mentioned is very interesting again, because Vygotsky did not analyze that side of creating plays, the relationship between the author and the character. That was who Bakhtin did. I don't know if you know Bakhtin. Bakhtin, yes. Bakhtin. He also lived at the same time in Russia at the beginning of the century, 20th century and the revolution, and he lived much longer, but Vygotsky died in 1934. So that connects with that very much. Vygotsky also wrote a book called The Psychology of Art, which is now out of print in English, and if you can find it, it's an old 1974 edition of MIT Press. In this book, he analyzes, it's an analysis of characters and the storylines. And one of the things that he found that, and talks a lot about, is that every artwork, be it a painting or a story or a fable, and he did a lot of analysis of literature, because before he became a psychologist, he was a literary critic. So there is always a parallel of emotions that run opposite ways. And so Carrie says, I always like to play a negative character. It's negative to something, because in order to construct a dramatic tension and to create the purpose not of the character but for the whole story, there has to be some reason to tell the story. And the reason Vygotsky found is that our literary production and our art production is really the social construction of emotions. So it's not, our emotions are not just natural. We are people who have socially constructed emotions. And the way how we do it is to from creating fables, which are folk stories really. We don't know authors. Sometimes some people wrote them down, so they're called Aesop's fables or something. But they're very, very old stories. The structure of these stories and then the literary stories always follows two paths of emotions, positive and negative, and kind of stretches you as far as it can. You know, when you watch a movie and you know as an observer something bad is going to happen to the character, and the character is at the peak of the positive emotion. The more they feel good, the worst thing is going to happen to them. Or the other way, the worse they feel, like in The Ugly Duckling, the better the outcome is going to be. So the moment of implosion of these emotions is called catharsis. And it is the restructuring of everything. You have now experienced something watching and being in the playing or watching the art, which completely changes you as a person emotionally in a certain way that was shaped and formed by the dramatic thing. And Ugly Duckling, another reason that I chose it, also absolutely has this line of having bad and good being constantly at each other, and the worse it goes for the duckling, seemingly the outcome is going to be so fantastic. And finally, in the last scene, when the duckling is already a swan, he goes to the swans in order to be killed by these beautiful birds, because he's so miserable that he wants to die, and puts his head down in order for them to kill him, when he sees that he also is a swan. And of course they all do. So that's such a transformative, very, very transformative. Another thing is, in this story you can also see a lot of humor. And not only that Anderson put in, but we all put a lot of humor, a lot of fun stuff to happen. While all the time the story is really very sad story, because here is a person ostracized, has to follow his own destiny and find incredible temptations or death along, and we're laughing all the time. Were you not asking for something?
I have a bunch of things to say, but I'm just wondering, this story was just touching me. I mean, to me, the curse of the age is like infantilism. That all of these characters, like maybe animals, you could say they're infants, but there was like no grown-up. It was like all like a baby trying to speak to another baby. And it's just, I mean, where do you find like the child-adult or, separation, or do you think there's a progression toward that?
In the story?
Yeah,
these
in the
stories?
story or just, you know, in
See, I don't know if this is the experience that I was thinking when I was talking something, I don't know if it's similar or just related, which is that part of what I experienced in us playing with it was we were a little bit fighting against the dualism of good and bad that is in stories, right? In fairy tales, good and bad are always 100%. You're either a good character or a bad character. And in my experience, humanity has developed to the point where it's just clear to us it's not that clear. So I thought in the playing of it, in some ways, you have to play what seems like a very childlike character because it's supposed to be all one way or the other. And that's childish. It's childish to think somebody's either all good or all bad in some way. I thought the mother was the most complex character in that way.
When I chose to be the mother, I immediately felt before the play got social, and I was just in my head, am I a good mother or am I a bad mother? And you know how we always describe Vygotsky as being like, talking about being ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
I think I started out the play feeling like I was behind myself. And it wasn't until there got to be some collective movement that you could move with that I was able to be good and bad at the same time, you know, react to you as I'll be bad with you, I'll be good with you. But it wasn't until that social creation happened that I felt that I wasn't behind myself.
I had the experience that we were so tied to the story that we weren't allowing our characters to develop, if you will. Like, I'd become, so I really felt like the story should have ended when you decided to be a turtle. I thought, who cares what Anderson thought?
Right.
You wanted to be a turtle.
Right.
Yeah.
Imani, you were going to ask a question, I'm sorry.
Mary,
Or one of you are.
Yeah, I am, I think that you have to, so, you wanted to ask
Oh, I
something?
wanted to know what you meant by behind yourself.
That I didn't feel like I and Lee kind of knew where we were going or could create something that we didn't know yet. I kind of felt like I need some help here. And so I felt like I was behind my character.
Like in time.
Yeah, that I didn't know where to go. I felt, you know, until there was a collective playing together, I didn't know if I was a good mom or a bad mom or a swan mom or a turtle mom. Or,
That the characters only emerged in the interactions with each other and the socialness of it.
I think that part of what I'm struggling with in trying to figure out how we can learn something and what we could learn in terms of research and this kind of, you said something in the beginning in your presentation that I would like to see if you can say more about in terms of what research is, and you build what is that you are studying to study it.
Right.
So I think that I would like to see if you can say more about that. And then that in connection to the pools that I feel that we will struggle with in terms of knowing the content of the story and explaining the characters and explaining why you thought about that, did you think about that, and the timing of all of that. It was first or was after. Do you build a character thinking that you're going to build a character a particular way, or just started building it and ended up in a particular way? So those kind of questions regarding how is that you build things. Are you going to use the content of what you are building to understand what you are building, or you are going to use the activity of building it as the way to understand what you are building? So there are some questions that I thought that maybe you both can talk about it. And my hint is that's part of the difference between you both. That's
Yes,
part of what I was perceiving.
Right. Well, it's interesting listening to Anna talk about the story this time. I had the experience of being very curious about her way as opposed to being aware of so much differences. I think if you had to characterize the difference just, again, in a box, but we're not in a box, so we're interacting, I'm not as, it's not a difference, it's what we're interested in, I think. So I'm not as interested in, or I wasn't until she started talking today, the meaning behind fairy tales, if you will. That's not been my passion, is not the ways in which it speaks to the cathartic and it speaks to the, when you described it today, I was intrigued. It is clear to me that fairy tales speak to us for a reason. and that every culture creates stories of that kind, and that often the stories bear striking resemblance to each other. There are Cinderella stories in every culture, and as a human being and as a scholar, I find that fascinating. But my passion, and what I think Vygotsky has taught me, is for the activity of people creating. And so I was particularly struck, so I'm struck in how we created in the ways in which we were both constrained by the content. Like, oh, we can't let her become a turtle. That's not the end of the story. Or, wait, she's supposed to not go to the chicken farm. Not, you know what I mean? Like the ways in which that constrains us, which I think is fine. The relationship between that and the ways you can, at the drop of a hat, say, oh, I'm not a bad guy anymore. Now I am,
You can change your character.
Isn't
Now I'm a
that
car
how kids
dealer.
play and design the games?
Say anybody.
Isn't that how the kids
Yes.
play and create
Yes.
the games?
But they play with both. If you watch children play, the content of, we were talking about this last night at dinner, that, I have a 2-year-old friend, and his mother was having surgery. And I was sitting with him, and he spent 2 hours playing with his little monkeys of how, oh, the mommy monkey had surgery, don't jump on the mommy. And they like, don't jump on the mommy. For like 5 minutes, he's like, okay, mommy's better, jump on the mommy. And then he's like for like an hour. Like, so it's clear, there's obviously something there that he's using that to understand, make sense of, and I see that. I think that's incredible. We can do that in play in part because it's not real. So he can play with that. He can go beyond, if you will, his desire to jump on her in play because it's not real. So I think that's fascinating. The push and pull between real, not real. So I do think one of the differences between us is the focus, if you will, and
But you both played the role of constraint buster.
Buster. Yeah, in the play.
I feel very, very awkward when I play in this workshop because behind me are about 10 workshops of this, and I have memories of all. And then I think, I don't want to be the one who moves this play this or that way because I have a different position here, and also as a workshop leader. So I want to give a lot of freedom, whatever people come up with, and then I'm surprised, oh, another time turtle, because we had turtles before.
I have, just one comment. It's interesting because my response to her becoming a turtle was like, but you just did, you know what I mean? Like
You
that's
just
not,
was what?
that's not
who
really
you
your
are.
true self.
Ah.
You know, you found these turtles, they're the first people to be nice to you, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna be a turtle because these people are nice to me. It was like, but, so I really wanted the story to keep going, not because...
Not because the Anderson story, but because in the story, you felt that's not her true self.
Yes.
Okay.
That she just adopted that at that moment for convenience.
But functionally, I mean, I was a turtle, and so...
So I speak for the turtles.
Yeah. So dramatically, being a turtle has two meanings. One is I'm comfortable with the turtles because they're treating me nice. But the other is, this is the way to be a person. If you're a turtle, you're kind to people, and I can go on and in other groups, as she did, she was kind of a turtle. So she's learning how to be a good person in this intermediate group. So she takes a quality from it, abstracts it, and moves on to the full thing.
So you came up with the turtle because they were corrupting wild geese there, and that wanted to corrupt her to become like a gambler or something. And you came up with turtles to keep her and make her a good person.
That wasn't my experience.
No, that was not
Somebody
intended.
said she needed to have a friend.
Yeah.
You did, I think.
Yeah. You gave us a choice of characters. And
Why that matters? Why that is important?
Which
Because
one?
Because it would have been like...
If you are researching and exploring the role of play in, let's say, people's growth and development, or people creating environments where people can get to know each other, but I mean, I don't know what.
But why is what important? What is the thing?
The thing about what kind of turtle he or she is, so what came first, so the philosophical
Underpinnings, yeah. Well, it's funny that
Oh, yeah.
I think you might be making a separation I'm not making. Maybe you're not, let me just ask you. I think that conversation is as much a form of play as when we were on the floor. So I don't think it has some meaning for me, some deep meaning. I think this conversation is as much a form of play
Yes.
as that. So
Yeah.
from that vantage point, the line in the play, what kind of turtle are you, to me is similar to come sit over here, we'll take care of you. They're playful lines in a process that, so to me, as a researcher, I'm not interested in it from the vantage point of what kind of turtle are you, but from the how do you continue to create an environment for people to play with these
Including
things?
language.
Including
And
language.
creating-
And including the fact that we are a society deeply influenced by psychology. So the question, what kind of a turtle are you, is a particular kind of line in a play. Similar to, are you a good guy or a bad guy? Those are very, are you a good witch or a bad witch? Those are very societally, so I think they're fascinating to unpack. And you can't just say, those stay out the door because we're not interested in them. They're in here. Every one of us in this game was playing with good and bad. Whether you believe in it or not, it existed in the play, in my opinion. I mean, it was a,
Just from the point of view
of the ugly duckling.
of the ugly duckling, it just would have been unbearable without
The turtles.
without the turtles.
Right. In some ways, we created the turtles because as a community of people, I think it was unbearable for us.
Yeah,
I don't think it was just you that
Yeah.
felt that way.
yeah, no, because it wasn't
Yeah.
my idea to
Yeah.
create. Certainly.
The question I had was why you didn't tell the story so that there was like one telling of the story as opposed to those of us who remember it in different ways telling.
Because I thought that to make play mostly like exploration and like children usually play, telling the full story or reading the Anderson story will leave us with very little choices and give us what we would do, we would just then illustrate somebody else's exploration. And this was, we had a lot of after the pond scene with the mother duck and when the swan goes away, ugly duckling goes away, there was complete freedom to do whatever we want. That's the part of the story that people usually don't remember. But in Anderson's story, if you go back, you can Google it, it's online. It's a beautiful part of the story with very significant characters. And if I put that in, I would take away your ability to invent turtles and wild geese and all kinds of that.
I was surprised how many people remembered lines from the story. I mean, I couldn't remember any words from the story at all. There were some scenes I remembered, maybe a quarter. They were just the main lines, but beyond that, not so. It was like a discovery process, and it was going on at two levels, the words and the actions.
Yeah. I mean, part of why I love this activity, maybe this is also responding to Yvonne, is most of life is not improvised. Most of life involves us playing with the scripts we already have. Like yes, there are moments when we're able to completely break from the script, but for the most part, if we want to create something new, even politically, in my opinion, you have to play with the scripts that are. That's how you can create
And to break
new
out of
ones.
it is...
So part of what I love about this is that we have the script, but we don't have it so rigidly that we can't break from it and make use of it in creative ways. And as an educator, I find that very important because most people in schools and even outside don't have the freedom to say no script at all. But they do. This is like, what could you do with the scripts? There's so many things to do with the scripts that you're given. Yeah.
Could you say how you use this kind of activity?
Well, this kind of activity can be used in class.
But how do you use it?
Since I don't teach in elementary schools, I don't use it, but I use it.
Teach adults who do it.
I teach adults who do that, and I teach students who are going to become teachers or are already teachers, and ways of seeing that what they are accustomed to in the way of their training and what schools as an institution demands of them is very constraining to themselves and to the children, and makes the school's activities dull and boring, unengaging, and loathsome, really.
So this is something that a teacher could do with young children, so the children play out the play and create
Yes.
the play simultaneously.
And that's one of the possibilities, but then you can take this type of activity and find out what are the components of our activity and use that in teaching math too. Because if you teach math in a way that doesn't tell the students, 2 and 2 is 4, and it's 4 because that's logical and there is no other way, then you are teaching endpoints and known scripts. But if you try to let the children discover their own 2 and 2 and how their own 2 and 2 works, and because there are many ways to do that. And one of the things that we are discovering, especially in math, is that the ways how people imagine the process of division, for instance, or the process of addition, images that come to that may be so different. And that if you don't let them come out, and each child have their own or adult ability to tell others how they envision this whole thing. They are not aware also then of this envisioning because it never can come out, and they can never really kind of move forward. Some of the people can. Some people can and learn to be very obedient and do what the teacher tells them and believe that and trust. And some people can never do that, and then they lose contact with science, with math, with all of that. You can use play, and similar to this. We don't have to be all on the floor, but if you stop and say, "I want to do this and this," and the teacher can say, "Well," instead of saying you're wrong, I'll give you one example. There is $1. How do you divide the dollar between 3 people? And the children have 1/4 or 3/4 and some pennies. They have different combinations. And so some children are very quick in moving that, and they say the last penny is the reminder and everything. And so it looks like real math. In one school where we were doing some research, this girl kept making flowers where there was a 1/4 in the middle and there were pennies around, and there were 3/4 with pennies around, and then there was this extra penny. And the teacher was trying to tell her that she's doing something wrong because she was making these flowers. But really she was dividing. But he asked her how many. She said, "I don't know, I didn't count yet." But she divided before she counted. So if you as a teacher agree that this is kind of a game where everybody can have their own way of doing that, and use it as an offer, because that's part where it's similar with improvisation, that whatever somebody brings to the floor, and that's what we saw in the game. We don't say, "Well, don't do that." We say, "Oh, you're going out," and then Melissa said, "Okay, she's going to my chicken coop, I'm going to bring her back." So in order to stay in the story and not to say, "Oh, don't go away," we stretch the story in such a way to create things that we want. But we stretch it within the story. We don't deny what people do. We accept it and then try to fit it in or to stretch it in.
Just a couple of things. Just want to go back to when I first started here. That, the original purpose of education, Napoleon created the first system, compulsory education, to get young, malleable recruits into the army, infantry, infanta, babies.
Right.
Okay.
So the question is really, when we talk about education, what is your purpose as an educator? To make people who are obedient and follow you and don't have their own mind, or to make people who are developed as full people and have a critical ability to think about themselves and the others and make judgments and be accepted as such, no matter how different they are.
But in the older group, like, because I deal with high school students and I've done the gamut, right? In entering the classroom, you're already confronted with a force where kids don't want to see other kids succeed. They don't want to see them be self-expressed because they're threatened. So they kind of like pull everyone down. So as you're coming in with this new, I want to change the world and I really want everybody to be open, they're like,
it's a process, you can say, because once you're starting from a point of view where they already had a lot of negative experience.
Absolutely.
And then you have to do much harder work in order to, as you say, soften them up, and analytical, to make a situation in which they can start to collaborate. One of the things is you can't create a play without collaboration. Play falls apart every time that people start to deny other people's offers.
Absolutely.
So that the tasks that are put in school, and they could be tasks that are very relaxing because they are not demanding and nobody's going to be a failure, but such tasks that only working together you can achieve them, like a play like this. Or there's could be things like song or music, that you have to collaborate to create music. There are many activities where you can, collaboration is a part without which the activity does not happen.
Well, and the fact is, and I think this is something that young people have many experiences like that outside of school. So what you're seeing in school, and the purpose of school in our society has never been to be the most creative for the vast majority, and there's not a lot of evidence about to become that. So I think that some of why we work with play here and various kinds of play is not because we think you're going to be able to do that in school. It's to continue to find environments where you can offer that to young people, where they can participate in activities that require the kind of collaboration. And again, I think children need both. They do need to learn how to play the game, follow the rules, do the math problem in this way, because that's the world we've got, and they need to do that in such a way that they're being invited and welcomed into the community of people who are more creative than that.
The complete flip side is me.
I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. I know the thing says 1, but we're going to need to end in about 2 minutes because we have to be out of the room completely by 1 o'clock for the next
cleanup.
So.
Just saying, the MIT School of Artificial Intelligence, the highest post-grads create the most meaningful discoveries playing with blocks. Just the way kindergarten kids, so it's all right for them, but it's bad for the kids in it's just play, The only way to create meaning and understanding is a story. Story is the backbone of a community. So if you want to control and dominate, Chomsky, keep the public as ignorant and confused as possible equals power, is to dump out play. It's the only thing there is. And thank God for you and some other people that you're rescuing it and bringing it back to life. But it's like dumber than dumber, like duh. Excuse me, I just get very upset about this.
It's upsetting. The lack of play and opportunities for play, as I said in the beginning, is something that we feel very, very, very strongly about. You say, and I just need to see if Melissa's outside.
The personal computer revolution in the mid and late 70s came about. One huge component of it was play. People playing around, first of all, with the machines and inventing them, playing around and what they could do with them, and then finally, certainly 1/3 of the interest in application was in games and play and the blocks, everything else. The top magazine in, say, 77 was had the word play in it, creative computing. So it wasn't the word, but the idea. And that, it was exploring a computer for its own sake and what it could do for you as an individual, not for the next person or not for any tasks you were doing. And we wouldn't have personal computers today if it weren't for that.
Yeah.
Later on, lots of other things happened, and it completely changed the computer field itself because so many more got built and used. than the mainframes and
But
stuff.
discovering the mouse is by watching an infant contacting its environment in a crib. It sees, it reaches, and, okay, it was an infant that...
It's navigating.
Yeah. It's...
Yeah.
So
They had no boundaries, in other words.
I have a question. Why did you bring out the gun to shoot us?
Because I also wanted to create a little bit more dramatic scene, something to fight against, something to overcome, to put an obstacle into the game.
I wasn't
Just one
ready to
final
die.
question.
She likes to kill.
I think she just wanted to kill somebody.
I wasn't ready to die.
Is that my last question?
So,
Yeah.
how do you think about, or like look at the activity of children having this kind of dialogue about their play, deconstructing their play, how they understood what was going on?
I think
What is
children,
that activity?
yeah, when there is a spontaneous play, not organized like we did it with cameras and everything, children stop and start all the time. They start playing, they stop and they talk about what they want to change direction. No, you do this and I'll do that, and then so they are constantly both actors and directors and writers of the script and everything at the same time. So those mental levels are there all the time.
Yes, but then do you have like an organized,
Do you encourage people to have this kind of conversation with children?
If
where
it's
they're
a,
self-reflexive of how they were making?
yeah, if
those
that's a activity that's taking place in a center like we had drama workshops, yes. If otherwise, children play without adults knowing what they do, and you don't stop them to talk about that.
All right, it's very, very interesting. I'd love to keep going.
It's
I'm
a very
getting to
interesting
get out.
question.
Before I turn it over to Melissa, she's got a few things to say. I just want to invite people to my next playground, which is on December 13th in Brooklyn. And it's an extended time playground. It's going